It was years ago. We were sitting in the middle of a meeting. There were exactly 8 people around the table. I spoke up and shared an idea. Almost no one even looked my way. I didn't feel like they took me seriously at all. About 15 to 20 minutes later, the man sitting directly across from me repeated the exact same idea, just with slightly different wording. Everyone loved it, laughed, and nodded in agreement. So that day, I went home and really thought about this incident for hours. Why didn't they listen to me? Why did this happen? But I want to point out that I was actually asking the wrong question. The right question should have been, did I behave in a way that allowed my voice to be heard? Actually, this video starts with exactly that question. So, knowing your worth isn't some abstract talk about self-confidence. It's practically a sign of a concrete stance. I'm talking about a noticeable energy, and the most important part is that it's a skill you can definitely learn. Today, I'll explain all the details to you. Let's get started with the first point without wasting any time. 1. Knowing your worth is definitely not an arrogant attitude. Unfortunately, many women constantly confuse these two things. They think, I shouldn't show myself in a very good light. If I do, people might think I'm arrogant. Right at that moment, without realizing it, they're actually diminishing themselves. In other words, they step back and choose to stay in a quiet position. Then they keep asking themselves why people don't take them seriously. First of all, arrogance is thinking you're better than everyone else. Knowing your worth, however, is something entirely different. You need a clear answer to the question, who am I? What am I not? What do I say yes to? What do I say no to? Arrogance is loud. Self-worth, on the other hand, is a quiet and clear stance. You can visualize this like this. For example, a woman walks into a room. She isn't actually telling anyone, I'm valuable, yet everyone looks at her in some way. Why do you think that is? Because she carries no doubts about herself in her mind. And this clarity reflects in her body, her posture, her tone of voice, everything. Believe me, it even reflects in those moments when she's silent. Research consistently supports this. For instance, a study conducted at Princeton University clearly showed that people form their first impression of someone within the first few seconds, 90% of the time. So, as you might guess, those first few seconds don't involve a single sentence. There's just a presence and an exchange of energy. For instance, let me ask you this. When someone asks you, what do you want? What kind of feeling comes over you? If the answer, oh, whatever, immediately pops into your mind, I want you to know this. That is not humility. It's a sign of not trusting your own preferences. So when you act like that, people can sense it immediately, even subconsciously. Because someone who doesn't trust their own decision, as you can imagine, can't inspire trust in another person's decision either. What we call knowing your worth is a concrete reality, not an abstract feeling. It means being aware of this. What I'm going to say at this meeting is quite important. My expectations in this relationship are very serious, and I can say no to this offer because it's definitely not the right thing for me. Of course, when you form such sentences in your mind, you never hesitate. You don't have the thought of going on the defensive, because you can analyze these things very well on your own. There's also this situation. A woman who doesn't know her own worth constantly finds herself in a struggle to prove herself. She always waits to see how each success will be received and spends hours replaying those words in her head after every criticism. This is, of course, extremely exhausting for the mind, for the soul, and in terms of time. However, a woman who knows her worth listens to criticism carefully. If there's something positive worth taking from it, she takes it. She lets the rest go. She doesn't feel the need to defend herself. She simply says thank you and moves on. I'd like to suggest a different exercise related to this. It's simple but has a surprisingly powerful effect. Tonight, take a piece of paper, a phone note will do, and write this down. I'm really good at these things. Write just 3 things, then write this next to it. It's actually unfair to expect these things from me. Write 3 more things. Now, when you understand these 2 lists together, they form your value map, and someone who knows this already sees something truly different when they look in the mirror in the morning. Not someone asking, "Who am I?" but someone who clearly recognizes who they are. By the way, I know this is at least the 3rd, maybe even the 4th video you've watched on my channel, and the fact that you still haven't subscribed really breaks my heart, because seeing you here, walking side by side on this journey, means so much to me. If you subscribe, it'll be the strongest support you can give me, and we'll never lose touch again. 2. Not setting boundaries isn't kindness. It's literally leaving the invitation open endlessly. Unfortunately, when many women hear the word boundary, the concept of coldness or distance comes to mind. They might fear, "I'll push people away." That's why they don't feel the need to set boundaries. Unfortunately, they end up having to put up with everything, somehow fulfilling every request, and always dealing with every discomfort on their own. And they call this kindness. But I want you to know this. This is definitely not kindness. It's a door left wide open saying, "You can do whatever you want to me." And as you know, any kind of wind can blow through an open door. Now, we need to emphasize this. Why is the inability to set boundaries so widespread? Because from a young age, women have always been told, "Don't be harsh, try to make everyone happy, be accommodating." These messages have become so ingrained that when you do set a boundary, you might feel guilty as if you're doing something wrong. Yet the opposite should be true here. In other words, failing to set boundaries means you're teaching others how to treat you, and they're learning that lesson very well. For example, last year I received a message from a viewer. Her name was Camilla. She was a 44-year-old marketing director from Bogota. She had long brown hair and was always well dressed. She was always the most prepared person in meetings. However, she shared this complaint with me. "Everyone wants something from me, and no one even says thank you." Actually, as we talked a bit more, the following situation emerged. Her co-workers expected her to work overtime because she'd never said no to anyone up until that point. Her family planned their weekends around her because she had never said, "Not this week." Her partner made decisions on his own because she had never objected. Camilla was truly a good person, I realized that. However, without realizing it, she was sending everyone this message. My time, my energy, and my boundaries are completely open. If we look at it from a different angle, a boundary isn't actually a wall. Understanding and grasping this is very important. A wall keeps people out. A boundary, however, clearly defines who is allowed in and under what conditions. These 2 things I'm talking about are different. A woman with boundaries isn't loved any less. On the contrary, she's respected more. Because people subconsciously feel, "This person values herself so much, so I should value her too." Of course, this situation is the result of a psychological reality. So it's perfectly normal to place greater value on something that's hard to obtain. It's almost like a rule of human nature. Now, you might ask me this critical question. How do I set boundaries? Not by giving long explanations, sentences that start with, "I can't do this because," are already forms of defense. And remember, defense is just another language of weakness. Instead, try this. "This isn't right for me. Period." Or, "I'm not available this week." No further explanation, no apology, no excuse, because you don't need a reason. Your needs are no less important than someone else's expectations. 3. Stop saying yes all the time. For example, have you ever noticed this? The value of someone who's always available eventually diminishes. Someone who goes to every invitation, responds instantly to every message, and rushes to fulfill every request. Are they loved? Maybe. But are they valued? No, because the human mind automatically categorizes what's easily accessible as ordinary. This isn't a personal judgment. It's an evolutionary reflex, and you're falling victim to this reflex without even realizing it. Why does saying yes come so easily to so many people? Because it provides instant relief. There's no conflict, no one gets hurt, and you don't feel guilty. In the short term, everyone is happy. But what happens in the long run? People start taking you for granted. The phrase, "he'll do it anyway," starts circulating behind your back. And one day when you say no, and that day will inevitably come, they'll be surprised. They might even get angry, because you've been teaching them something different for years. I'll tell you about another woman living in Bogota. Her name is Valentina. She's 48 years old, a mother of two, and runs a small accounting firm. She's of average height, always dresses simply, and has a very warm smile. When she told me this, there was both weariness and understanding in her eyes at the same time. "For years I was everyone's go-to person," she said. "When my friends had problems, they'd call me first. When my brother was short on money, he'd always come to me. When my employees asked for something, they knew I'd never say no." Then she paused. "But one day, I got sick. I was really sick. I couldn't even get out of bed. Did anyone call to ask, 'How are you?' No one did. Because Valentina was always the giver. She never tried to be the one who received. And people forgot to see her as someone who deserves to receive. Actually, there's another truth. Absence has value. Don't brush this off lightly. You don't have to attend every meeting. You don't have to say yes to every social invitation. You don't have to reply to messages instantly every night. Sometimes staying silent, sometimes staying out of sight, sometimes saying, "Not this time." It doesn't make you cold. It makes people curious about you. And being curious about is the first sign of your value. Think about this. Observe how someone who talks a lot and someone who talks very little are perceived in the same setting. The person who speaks less carries more weight with every word. The value of your voice comes from its rarity. Actually, there's a fine line here, and don't miss it. When I say there is value in your absence, I'm not telling you to play games or be calculating. This isn't a fake distance. It's a genuine inner balance. In other words, knowing this, my time is limited, my energy is valuable, and I will give it to what truly matters. Making this choice isn't manipulation, it's maturity. In American psychological literature, this is called boundaries from values. It's clarity that comes from within, not from rules. 4. People clearly see how they allow others to treat them. We've come to one of the most important and valuable points, because this is the point many women fail to see for years. You say, "People treat me this way." You complain, you get upset, sometimes you cry. But have you ever asked yourself, how did I allow this to happen? I know this question sounds harsh, but without tough questions, there are no gentle answers. First, let me say this. People learn how to treat you from you. This isn't a theory. It's a reality you can observe every day in real life. Someone who calls you late at night and you answer every time has learned they can call you at any hour. Someone who doesn't take what you say seriously and you don't push back has learned your words are fleeting. Someone who speaks to you loudly and you normalize it has learned that tone is acceptable. You're the one teaching them, every single time. Don't take this personally. This isn't an accusation. It's a starting point for reclaiming your power, because it means this: if you taught them, you can change them too. There's no need to wait for someone else to change. There's no need to wait for someone else to get it. When you start behaving differently, the dynamics of the relationship inevitably shift. You've probably felt this at least once in your life, how the person across from you changes when you change your attitude. I also want to mention that a study on relationship dynamics conducted at Harvard revealed the following finding. People determine the acceptable boundaries of behavior in a relationship based on how the other person reacts to their own behavior. In other words, the boundary comes from you, not them. This study also showed that when someone changes their attitude, the other person's behavior in the relationship adapts to it within an average of 6 to 8 weeks. 6 to 8 weeks, that's how short it is. But you wait without changing and years go by. Ultimately, I want to ask, is there a behavior in your life that bothers you but that you keep accepting? Most likely there is. And most likely, that behavior has been going on ever since you silently accepted it that first time. That first silence, that first okay. That's the moment the rules of that relationship were written. But the rules can be rewritten. It's not too late. Because change doesn't start with a conversation. It starts with an attitude. And you can choose that attitude today. 5. Use your silence wisely. Power sometimes lies in knowing when not to speak. I want to start with this harsh truth. When you feel compelled to fill every silence to defend yourself, you're actually telling the other person, I need your approval. And anyone who receives that message unconsciously shifts into a position of superiority. Speaking is sometimes a sign of strength, yes. But being able to remain silent at the right time, in the right place, is a much deeper form of strength. Someone who lacks self-confidence cannot do this. Of course, naturally, silence is uncomfortable. Know this. When something is said and you don't respond, the person across from you tries to fill that void. They clarify, add details, or back down. Because silence creates pressure. It's not the speaker, but the one who remains silent who controls that pressure. Once you realize this, you'll stop making unnecessary defenses or producing unnecessary explanations. Because now you know, not responding is also an answer. And most of the time, it's the strongest answer. For example, what do you do when someone makes an unfair criticism of you? Most likely you start talking right away. No, that's not it. I did this. You misunderstood. The sentences get tangled up. Your tone shifts to defense. And in the end, do you end up being right? No. Because defending yourself legitimizes the accusation. Instead, take a deep breath, look them in the eye, and say nothing. Just look. That silence speaks louder than 10 sentences. It says, this criticism didn't shake me. It says, I already know who I am. If we look at it from another angle, neuroscience has a striking insight on this. When faced with silence, the human brain perceives a threat and feels compelled to speak. In other words, silence is a tool of social pressure. Negotiation experts, therapists, and experienced leaders have been using this for years. You can use it too. But first, you need to stop being afraid of silence. Most women fill the silence because they think, I don't want to seem strange. That fear of seeming strange is actually the need for validation itself. In addition, using silence effectively isn't limited to moments of conflict. It applies to the small moments of daily life as well. Someone asks you for something, you don't have to immediately say, sure, no problem. You can say, let me think about it. If someone asks you a question and you don't know the answer, you can say, I don't know, without adding an explanation or apologizing. In a meeting where everyone is talking, you can stay silent and then transform the room with a single sentence. Few words carry great weight. This isn't a communication tactic, it's inner maturity. 6. Stop feeling the need to defend yourself. Picture this. How many times have you made a decision and then crafted sentences to explain that decision to someone? How many times have you said, I did this because I thought that actually I meant this? Don't get me wrong. Did you feel empowered while making those explanations, or were you waiting for validation? You already know the answer. Making an explanation often says, don't judge me, I'm right. And that's proof you've already gone on the defensive. Of course, there's a very fine line here. Providing information is one thing. Defending yourself is another. Someone asks you for information about a project. You inform them, that's normal. But if someone questions a decision you made and you immediately try to prove why that decision is right, that's a defense. And a defense tells the other person, I can't fully stand by this decision without your approval. Do you realize that? The moment you defend yourself, you're effectively treating the questioner as a judge. I want to talk about this. There was a woman living in Seville named Isabel, 46 years old, who always wore her hair in a bun, wore glasses and was very intelligent. She worked as a coordinator at a non-profit organization. She laughed a little as she spoke. Laughing at oneself is a sign of maturity. I would explain every decision I made to the team, she said. Why I chose this method, why I worked with that person, why I scheduled the meeting for that day. No one had asked. She was explaining it on her own. One day, a mentor told her, Isabel, every time you explain something, you're telling your team, I'm not sure about this decision. That sentence kept Isabel thinking for hours. And the mentor was right, because people who are truly certain don't explain, they just do. I'm not saying this. Be arrogant. Don't explain yourself. Don't listen. No. What I'm saying is, learn the difference between explaining yourself and defending yourself. Explaining yourself is a responsibility expected of you, and you fulfill it clearly and calmly. Defending yourself, however, begins with an internal anxiety, even when it's not expected of you. Where does that anxiety come from? From the fear of judgment. And the fear of judgment is a sign that your sense of worth lies outside yourself. Someone who knows their worth from within doesn't leave so much room for others' judgments. For example, try this in practice. When someone questions your decision, say, this was right for me. Period. Or say, I thought about this and chose this path. That's all. Don't follow it with because. Because opens the door to explanation. And once that door is open, every but from the other side will slip through it. When your statement is short and clear, there's no room for debate. People look for a gap to object. Don't leave that gap. Additionally, a study on leadership in the American business world revealed this. Managers who go on and on explaining their decisions are perceived as less trustworthy by their teams. Because the need to explain signals uncertainty. Those who communicate briefly, clearly, and calmly, whether they're right or wrong, are perceived as much stronger. It's like that in the business world. It's like that in the family. It's the same in friendships. Human psychology doesn't change, even if the environment does. You can make that difference too. Today, start by swallowing your next because sentence. 7. Someone who waits for approval is always forced to wait for someone else. For example, you woke up in the morning, put on some clothes, and looked in the mirror. What was your first thought? Do I look good? Wasn't it? Or you made a decision, and the thought, did I do the right thing, crossed your mind, and your thoughts immediately turned to someone else. You wondered what that person would say. This reflex works so quickly that you don't even notice it. But every time this reflex repeats, it disables your inner compass a little more. You know, why is seeking approval so exhausting? Because it never ends. When you get approval, you don't feel at ease. You start waiting for the next one. It's not fulfillment, it's just temporary relief. And when that relief fades, the anxiety comes back. It's bigger than that. In psychology, this is called an external reference system. Meaning your value compass isn't within you, it's in someone else. And that other person can change at any moment, fluctuate, or disappear. You're fluctuating along with them. Actually, right here, I want to say something specifically to women in America. It's one of the regions where social media is used most intensively, and research shows that for women constantly caught in the cycle of likes, comments, and validation, their sense of self-worth is becoming increasingly externalized. Of course, you share a photo, get few likes, and you feel different that day. This might seem like a small detail, but it isn't. It's the daily proof that your compass of worth is in someone else's hands. And unless this cycle is broken, No external success will truly satisfy you. Also, the hardest part about not waiting for validation is this. At first, it makes you feel very alone, because approval feels like a bond, a thin thread connecting you to others. When you cut that thread, at first you feel like you're floating in a void, but that void is actually freedom. Real connections aren't built on approval. Real connections are formed between two people who can say, no matter what you think, this is who I am. These kinds of connections are fewer in number, but much deeper. Of course, stopping to seek approval doesn't happen overnight, but you have to start somewhere. Try it with something small this week. Pick out an outfit without asking anyone. Make a decision without consulting anyone. Share an idea without gauging anyone's reaction, and then listen to your inner voice. What's there? Most likely a quiet but solid feeling. That feeling is your compass. The more you listen to it, the stronger it becomes. And one day you'll realize that the time you used to spend waiting for someone else's approval, you're now spending on yourself. That difference changes everything. 8. Don't state your worth. Try to reflect it. To give an example, have you ever heard someone say, "I value myself"? Maybe you have. But what did you feel when you heard that sentence? Most likely, you didn't feel much of anything. Because value isn't conveyed through words. Value is reflected through behavior, posture, and choices. You could spend years trying to craft a sentence that explains this, but the person across from you has already read you within the first 5 minutes. Not from your words, from you. Especially, notice this. People watch you before they listen to you. They look at how you sit. They look at how you react when asked a question. They watch what you do when you're interrupted. They watch whether you stay silent when someone challenges you. All of this means you're constantly sending a message without even realizing it. And that message either says, "You can treat me however you like," or "You must treat me in a certain way." You choose which one you send. Actually, here's another truth. One of the most concrete indicators of how you value yourself is time. How you treat your time teaches others how much you value yourself. Do you wait for hours for someone who's late without saying a word? Do you drop everything and rush over whenever you're called? Do you easily let others cancel your appointments? These may seem like small details. They're not. These are the most visible points on your value map. Someone who stands up for their time quietly sends the message, "My time is valuable every day." And people pick up on that message. In addition to this, there's another dimension to reflection. How you see yourself shapes how others see you. In social psychology, this is called self-evaluation reflection. People largely adopt the value a person attributes to themselves. So when you make yourself seem unimportant, you convince your surroundings of that too. The opposite is also true. This awareness can fundamentally shift your perspective. Because instead of thinking, "How do people see me?" you're asking, "How do I see myself?" And the second question is in the right place. I know a woman from Guadalajara named Valeria. She's 39, a graphic designer, has short hair and thinks very quickly. For years, her voice would tremble when she quoted prices to clients. She'd think, "They'll find it too expensive." She'd keep her rates low, tolerate late payments, and do extra work just to keep the client happy. One day she realized the clients who caused the most trouble were the ones who paid the least. The most respectful ones, however, were the ones who paid the most. He realized this wasn't a coincidence. When he raised his prices, something else went up too: the client's respect for him. He hadn't stated his worth, he'd demonstrated it. For example, try this week. It's a small thing, but the impact is huge. When someone compliments you, "You did a great job," "You look amazing," "You explained that so well," how do you respond? If you say, "Oh, it's nothing," "That's ridiculous, not at all," or "You're exaggerating," stop. That response pushes the praise away. And once pushed away, that praise doesn't easily come back through that door. Instead, try this: "Thank you. Just that, 2 words. But those 2 words say, yes, I deserve this. And that acceptance is the simplest yet most powerful way to reflect your worth. 9. The fear of losing ties. You not to anyone, but unfortunately to everyone. Think about it. Is there a relationship in your life you're holding on to, even though deep down you know this isn't good for me? A friendship, a job, a connection. You keep it going. Why? You're likely asking yourself, what if I lose it? This question influences your decisions far more than you realize, and as long as this fear is active, you're not making free choices. You're just trying not to lose. The question here is, why is the fear of loss so powerful? Because the brain processes loss much more intensely than gain. Research by Daniel Kahneman, one of the founders of behavioral economics, clearly demonstrated this. People react to the possibility of losing something with roughly twice the intensity they do to the possibility of gaining the same thing. So the brain is lying to you. It says, this is very valuable, don't lose it. But sometimes the very thing you're afraid of losing is the chain holding you back. So, how does this fear manifest in relationships? Like this. You put up with someone who doesn't treat you well because you tell yourself, maybe they'll change. You stay silent in a belittling environment because you tell yourself, at least I have a place here. You keep giving value to someone who doesn't value you because you think, what if they leave? At this point you have to ask, is the thing you're afraid of losing truly yours? Does it truly nourish you? Or is it just familiar? Because what's familiar isn't the same as what's good. The brain codes familiarity as security, and that's an illusion. I also want to say this. Freeing yourself from the fear of loss isn't the same as being indifferent. Don't confuse the two. Indifference is emptiness. Freedom, however, is a choice that comes from a place of fullness. It means knowing this. Even if I lose this connection, this job, this relationship, I'm still me. I'm still standing. I'm still valuable. Once this feeling takes root, the fear of loss may still be there, but it no longer dictates your decisions. It simply passes by as a feeling. And despite that feeling, you make the choice that's true to yourself. Ultimately, I want to ask you this. Think of 3 things you've done in your life to avoid losing: a relationship, a habit, a connection. Now ask yourself, if the fear of losing weren't there, would I still make this choice? If the answer is no, stop right there, because that's the point where freedom awaits you. Fear passes, regret doesn't, and the years spent living in fear of losing something appear, in hindsight, as the greatest loss of all. 10. Investing in yourself is not a luxury. It is, quite simply, essential. I actually want to start by asking you something. When you say, I'll make time for myself, what does a voice inside you say? Most likely it says, but there's this task, this person is waiting, this responsibility. And you listen to that voice. You push everything related to yourself to the bottom of the list. You call this sacrifice. You consider it a virtue. But let me tell you this, an empty vessel cannot fill another. I know this metaphor is old, but the reason it's old is that it's true, in the truest sense. What does investing in yourself mean? Let's make this concrete, because this phrase is so broad that it gets lost in its own breadth. Maintaining a sleep schedule is an investment. Reading something that enriches you is an investment. Taking care of your body is an investment. Stepping away from relationships that drain you is an investment. Setting aside time and money for something you want to learn is an investment. These aren't luxuries. They're the essential care needed to sustain yourself as a functional and valuable human being. You wouldn't let your car run out of oil and then wonder why it stopped. The same logic applies to yourself. Of course, there's also this situation, and I'm saying this especially to my viewers in America, The concept of self-care has unfortunately become something superficial there. Scented candles, face masks, weekend getaways. These are nice, yes, but true self-investment goes much deeper. Questioning what you put into your mind, reviewing who you're giving your time to, realizing which habits help you grow and which ones hold you back. These aren't just an hour spent in the bathroom, they're about rebuilding the structure of your life. There's a study from Stanford University. It found that women who regularly practice self-compassion and self-investment have significantly higher decision-making quality under stress. So, someone who takes good care of themselves doesn't just feel better. They think more clearly, make better decisions, and build healthier relationships. Investing in yourself isn't selfish. It's the smartest way to become a better person for everyone around you. Right here, I'm going to ask you this, and be honest. What have you invested in yourself this month? Not just money, but time as well. Did you learn anything? Did you take care of your body? Did you spend time with someone who helps you grow? Or did all your energy go to others? If it's the latter, that's no coincidence. It's a habit, and habits don't change without you noticing. Asking this question right now is the start of that change. In the end, I want you to take a very small but real step today. Set aside 2 hours for yourself this week. Just 2 hours. Don't give that time to anyone else. Put down your phone. During those 2 hours, do something that nurtures you, nourishes you, and gives you rest. It doesn't matter what it is. It could be a walk, silence, writing something, or reading something. What matters is this. For those 2 hours, completely shut out the question of what others think or expect. Just you. And you'll see, after those 2 hours, you'll return to the rest of your life feeling much more fulfilled, because everything you give to yourself comes back to you as something far greater than yourself. 11. Knowing your worth. Being able to be happy on your own. Yes, this is the final point, and it's the most important one. Because everything I've said so far, setting boundaries, not seeking approval, using silence, investing in yourself, all of it rests on a single foundation. That foundation is this. When you're alone, when no one appreciates you, when no one sees you, can you still feel good? The answer to that question reveals where your true compass of value lies. Above all, don't confuse being alone with loneliness. Loneliness is a void that fills your inner self with emptiness. Being alone, however, is a choice that fills your inner self with fulfillment. A woman who knows her worth can be alone. She can find comfort in silence. She can get through a day without approval, without being celebrated, seen, or appreciated. She can still wake up in the morning at peace with herself. This isn't a character trait. It's the clearest sign of an inner sense of self-worth. Of course, why can't most women be happy on their own? Because they've tied their happiness to external factors for so long that they no longer know what's inside them. What does so-and-so think of me? How do others see me? What would happen if this relationship didn't exist? These questions have taken up so much space that there's no room left for the question, what do I truly want? What do I feel? What do I value? And this void grows over time. As it grows, you feel an increasing need to fill it with external validation. That's how the cycle works. I'm going to ask you something honest right now, and this is the question I mentioned at the beginning of the video. Get ready. Right now, take all the relationships in your life, all the approval, all the praise, and clear them from your mind for a moment. Remove them all. What's left? Who remains? If a sense of panic arises within you when you ask this question, that's exactly the spot. That very panic is the point you need to work on, because that panic is saying, I'm not enough on my own. And this belief seeps into all your relationships, all your decisions, and your entire stance without you even realizing it. In essence, learning to be happy on your own doesn't mean stopping needing people. Let me be clear about this. Humans are social beings. We need connection. That's natural. That's beautiful. But there's a world of difference between needing and being dependent. To need, spending time with you nourishes me. I want this connection. To be dependent, without you, I feel incomplete. I cling to this connection. The first is a free choice. The second is a dependency. And no relationship built on dependency can truly be healthy. After these 11 points I've shared, I want to tell you one last thing. Tonight, when things have calmed down a bit, for example, sit alone with no phone, no noise, and no one else around, just yourself. And ask yourself this: in a moment today when no one was watching me, how was I with myself? The answer to that question will actually make everything crystal clear. If you could be at peace with yourself in that silence, it means you know your worth. If that silence bothers you, then I recommend going back to the beginning of this video and watching it again, because now you'll look at every aspect with a completely different perspective. And I want you to know this: trying to please everyone for years without ever hurting anyone, waiting for approval, being unable to set boundaries. These aren't bad behaviors or character flaws. They might just be habits that were taught to you incorrectly. But remember, anything that's learned can be let go of over time. And that was the essence of this video. Don't forget to subscribe, friends. I love you, and I want you to love yourselves too. See you in the next video.